Can we get started, inshallah? Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We're continuing Surah Al-Baqarah, as we said, just to set the stage. It starts out clarifying what is the proper relationship between any person and God, and that's Surah Al-Fatiha. So basically, defining the divine reality and then realizing that we are completely reliant upon Him and then seeking His guidance. That's all it is, and that's a renewing concept every day of every week of every year, right? Then He reveals the guidance at the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, right? And so this guidance is defined by certain qualities and characteristics. The people who will absorb it, the people who will benefit from it, they have certain characteristics that they have. So then it gave those characteristics. Then it just clarified that the nature of the heart is the first key factor to being able to gain these characteristics of mindfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, taqwa, right? So if your heart is shut off, if you've decided I'm a disbeliever, then you will be a disbeliever. And you will look at everything from guidance and see nothing that's beneficial. It will not be impressed by it. If the Prophet came and did miracles in front of your eyes, as many prophets did. I mean, there were prophets who watched, for example, the people who watched Moses. And they saw all of these signs and all of these miracles. And they said, yeah, he's just a magician. This guy's, a liar, right? Same thing in the time of Jesus. People who were blind and lepers and dead people being risen. And they said, oh, he's doing magic. They rejected him. The Prophet ﷺ, the moon is split, amazing feats of overcoming odds that seemingly are insurmountable. Yet they say it's just luck or whatever, or this is some sort of magic. So the person whose heart has chosen disbelief, no matter what comes in front of them, they will not believe until their heart chooses belief, right? So now then it talks about, for about 13 verses, the very unfortunate, confusing reality of hypocrisy, which is where there's either complete disbelief in the heart, and then there's a political agenda coming out of the tongue and the actions in order to gain something from believers. Or there is, which is the case in much of the world, in the Muslim community, there is belief in the heart, but there's some doubts, there's some desires, there's some inclinations that are not fully devoted to God, right? And so then those things will lead to manifestations of hypocrisy. And so that's basically what we're going to talk about. So the beginning of hypocrisy, we talked about, is a disease of the heart. So now we're going to talk about some character traits and some qualities that will be seen from someone who has these diseases in their heart. So it says here, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. Right? Just for reference, all of these notes are going to be downloaded onto the website, and you can go get them. So you might just want to keep some notes or take note of something that might not necessarily be here on this outline of the PowerPoint. So in Arabic, when you say wa, it means and, right? And so they have something in Arabic called waw al-istitnaf. To begin a sentence with and is seen as pure, eloquent Arabic. In English, do we begin sentences with and? No, this is seen as bad language. So you'll see the difference in a good translation between a bad translation of a Quran simply by opening and seeing if you see and at the beginning of almost every ayah. If you do, then here you have someone who probably is not literate very well in English, translating the Holy Quran for us into our language, or into the language that we're trying to learn it from, right? And so that's basically why you see that there. Ida is a term that is talking about something that will happen. Is when it happened. Meaning, remember when. Ida, look when it will happen. You see what I'm saying? So that's basically that. Qila is the passive. It was said to them. Qala, he said. Qila, it was said to them. Right? لا تفسدوا. Don't cause corruption. Don't cause turmoil. Fil ard, in the earth, in the land. قالوا, they said, their response is, إنما, the reality is narrowed down to. When you say إنما, they call that uslub al-qasr. To narrow something, if I said, إنما أنا أستاذ, all I am is a teacher, meaning I teach university classes all day, and that's all I do all day, right? I study, I research, I teach, that's all I do, right? That would be what that would mean, right? Nahnu means we, it's the pronoun for we. Muslihun, we are the ones bringing things back to their right original way. We are putting things together correctly. We are reforming it, right? So that's, the translation would be, when it is said to them, the people who have the disease of hypocrisy, don't spread corruption in the land, meaning the people around them will see that what they're doing is causing problems. Then their response will be to you, oh, we're merely reformers. We're just fixing things. We're just making sure everything's done correctly and in the best benefit of people. Whereas people around them will not see that. But they will say, and they will seemingly think, that they're causing goodness. Right? So, Salman al-Farisi was one of the great companions of the Prophet ﷺ. He suggested, because of the linguistics of Ida, right here at the top, that this is talking about somebody who will come. The majority disagreed with him. They said, clearly this is in the context of talking about the hypocrites. And the hypocrites were in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's just defining what their qualities are. So those in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and those who will come after, right? Those are all hypocrites. So it's first referring to them and then after. But Salman al-Farisi, he said this is a group who will come and they will be very well known for this kind of thing. That they will be doing something that everyone around them will say, that is a problem. That's causing corruption. And they will say, no, we're doing the right thing, right? So that's where we get ISIS, right? Who knows what a Khawarij are? Have you ever heard the term Khawarij? Raise your hand. Okay. In the English academia books, they call them Kharijites, right? So Khawarij, it happened right after the Prophet ﷺ alluded to them in more than one hadith, right? So he prophesied it, and there was seemingly some coming characteristics of people who were following Musaylama Kadhab in Yamama. But basically, he talked about a group who will come and they will be praying and fasting and seemingly so devout and so sincere in their religion. And in one weak narration, he says, they will raise the black flags, right? Believe it or not, this is a hadith, okay? And so he says, they seem to quote lots of things, they seem to worship a lot, they pray so much, they fast so much. He said, but the faith is not really in them, and that they are a misguided sect. And so the first time it was clearly agreed upon that they were identified was in the time of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh, when the Muslim Ummah basically came to an agreement that he should be the caliph, as the fourth caliph of the Muslims. And some of his followers had some exaggerated ideas about him, that he should have been the first, right? Even though the whole Ummah agreed Abu Bakr was the first. So basically, when there was a dispute about the priorities of what to do between Muawiyah radiallahu anh and Ali radiallahu anh, then basically they came to a point where they said, we should not have a civil war. We should put some wise figures to be arbitrators in this, and we will trust their decision. And so they put Abu Musa al-Ash'ari and Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhuma as representatives of both sides. So then a group came out from Ali who said that Ali is the holy chosen one who should have been the first caliph. And then they accused Ali of being a disbeliever. They said, Ali, you are a kafir because now you are giving human beings the right to decide something that was divinely given to you. It's ironic because they believe that he has some holy appointment, meaning he's like ma'soom. He should be free of error in their beliefs that they already have. And now clearly he's making an error, according to them, right? And so now they started against him. So now you had three groups. The mainstream of the Muslims, right? Who were saying that Muawiyah has a right to, be concerned about X, Y, and Z. At the same time, Ali is the main caliph, right? And then you have a group that said, no, Ali should be the only one, and he has wholly right to his position. And then this Khawarij group. These Khawarij people started fighting everyone, and their whole thing was to destroy everyone. They started making this policy that anyone that we've known to sin, that person is going to hellfire. Anyone. So this is what's interesting about the Khawarij. You might be confused about this. Most of our hadith scholars agreed that when a Khawarij person says a hadith, we accept it from him. Because they believe that if you're lying, you go to hell. Right? So even though everything else about them besides their lying, about their corrupt way of thinking, that would basically secure us that if they're saying the Prophet said it, probably he said it. Right? That they have a solid, trustworthy chain of transmission. So over time, Khawarij have popped up time and time again. The way you know them, they're their faction is always going to be us against the world. That's one thing. We're right, you're wrong. Everybody's going to look at them saying, you guys are messed up, causing all kinds of problems. And they're going to say, we are the chosen ones of God. We are the small group, the correct, pure, right Islam, and everyone else is kuffar, going to hell. That's right? So now you see, this is exactly what that is. And there's hypocrisy in this, yeah.
Can we stick to that, a cult? Can we say they're a cult?
It's a cult, for sure. Khawarij is a cult of people who are Muslim by declaration, but heretical, which means deviant by their practices. Yeah. It is not acceptable for us to say ISIS or the Khawarij are not Muslim. You can't say that. Why? Because that's one of their qualities. That's what they do. One of their main qualities is takfir. They call anyone Muslim who disagrees with them as a disbeliever. And then they say, well, now we can kill you, right? 99% of all of their victims are Muslim people, right? And so, theologically, we do not say someone is a disbeliever unless they themselves say, I'm a disbeliever, right? That's one of our main ways of Ahl Sunnah, the mainstream of Islam. So the next word here is ifsad. Ifsad, la tufsidu, it means to cause something to go from its ideal reality or environment and the way that it was meant to thrive and putting it in a way that it will be corrupt. What does that mean? That means hypocrisy and this disease of the heart will grow if the heart is in the wrong place. What does that mean? That means if I'm not seeking beneficial knowledge, if I'm not spending my time around people who are healthy companions, who will engage in me in a way that spirituality will grow, and I will become a more pious person, then I will become corrupt. If I seek knowledge that's not beneficial, if I take in music or television or friends and companies that are making me think in a way that is against divine revelation, then that disease will grow. So that's what we call ifsad al-qulub, is by the company that it keeps. The things you put in your eyes and ears go into your heart, right? And the people you stay around, generally, they're doing that. They're putting things in your eyes and your ears that's defining who you are, right? And so some people say, well, those people are not practicing Muslim, for example. Well, if you grew up in a family where people didn't pray, chances are you're not going to pray, right? So as a Muslim, when you realize and you see that prayer is hugely consequential to your spiritual reality and declaration of faith, then you're going to want to make sure that you struggle and strive against that current and against that comfort zone that you've got, which is against revelation, in order to gain that. So that means keep seeking beneficial of knowledge that will make you want to know Allah and get closer to Him, which prayer is a key aspect or a fundamental core aspect of that. And you will be around people who pray, right? And you will go to the mosque where people are always praying, right? I met one brother, mashallah, that I started noticing him come a lot, and he made this point to me. He said, to be honest with you, at work and in things like this, I have a hard time remembering and keeping up my prayer. So I just make sure I come to the mosque a lot so that I'm praying, right? And so that's one way to get yourself going. That's actually when I was a new Muslim, obviously I didn't know how to pray, right? So whenever I would come once or twice a week, because my whole life I've never prayed these times a day and in this way, I just wasn't comfortable with it. That's not my way. I had a good heart with belief, and I believed in revelation and prophethood, but I just didn't have that environment where the ideal spirituality could grow. So that's how ifsad happens. So it says corruption, that they spread sin and discord according to their desires, while not, it should be while rejecting revelation, right? So why would someone cause problems and harm and all of that and then claim, no, they're doing something good? Because their desire has overwhelmed them. Their desires have gotten them this idea that I have to have it this way, or it's in my best interest, right? And if you study, for example, ISIS, it's really a suppressed group who are living in a war-torn area, who were suppressed by a Shiite government in Iraq and in Syria. And so in that environment where they're being attacked from these people from a different ideology, and they're being treated as lesser, and then this other group invades the country and sends it into chaos, and now they've never been really educated well as to their own religion. So now somebody comes to them with a Quran and they're telling them, here, this is what you should do. They don't know their religion to properly answer that heretical interpretation. They're just going to go along with it, because right now it's a war-torn country. Seemingly we have nothing to live for, so let's fight for this. We're working for God here, right? So when the Christians were losing relevance, and they were just basically a small group in Italy and Greece, and pretty much they had become very narrow, and they were losing relevance in their imperial desires. So that's where the Crusades came from. The Crusades was like, okay, let's kill all the Jews and the Muslims and pagans unless they convert. And they started these huge, bloodshed missions to, gain political relevance and dominance. I'm not sure how devout the people running that campaign were towards the message of Jesus Christ, but I'm sure that they did have a desire to have political power and control. So that's basically what happens. So these people of the hypocrites in Medina, when some people ask them, why do you spend a lot of time with these Jewish people, and you come to the mosque and make these appearances, these cameos? They said, oh, what we're really doing is we're trying to mend between the hearts. We're trying to bring people together. That was their claim. Like right now when you hear about, there's these people, Ayan Hirsi and Majid Nawaz and Zuhdi Jasser, and this group of people call themselves Muslim reformers, right? And so if you look at them and you ask them what they're doing, well, we're trying to reconcile between the American public and the Western world and Islam. Well, if you look at them, they're rejecting revelation, and they're going against clear teaching. We're all for reconciling between culture and religion. Who is against that? Are any of you against that? Nobody's against that. We want to make sure that as Muslims, our loyalty is to God. At the same time, we have a loyalty to our citizenship, and we want to understand how can we do that where everybody is properly given their right without compromising. You see? That's the mainstream correct approach. But some of them, they're saying, well, we're just going to compromise this ayah and that ayah. Even some of them are calling that we should reject some ayahs from the Quran, right? And they're saying we should reject some things that the Prophet ﷺ taught. Well, there's something called ijtihad, where you interpret it and give it contextualization and understand the linguistics and the relevance of things of time, place, and circumstances. We have that in our tradition. But to just reject it because your desires say so, that's nifaq. That is hypocrisy. So that's one of the key traits, is that everybody would agree we want to reform, we want to make things better, we want to make life easier. Islam says that. Allah said, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرِ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرِ. Allah wishes for you ease. He does not wish for you hardship, right? He says, مَا جَعْلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. He does not make for you hardship in religion, right? So that's His nature. But to do it in a way where you're basically canceling out Islam because some people want you to, that's hypocrisy. Perspective is everything, right? At the end of the day, perspective is everything. أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ. وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. In Arabic, when you say أَلَا, it's like, pay attention, right? This is the reality, right? You're getting everybody's attention. It's a form of emphasis, right? إِنَّهُمْ. In Arabic, when you say inna, you say indeed, surely, verily, inna. Whatever it is I'm about to say, it's important stuff. Hum means they, and then hum means they. So when you have two repeated statements of the same word, then it's emphasizing this point. So basically, Allah innahum hum is a quadruple emphasis on the opposite of what they're saying, right? They're the corruptors and not the reformers. وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Lakin means but, meaning whatever I just said, it's not really that way, it's this way. Or you need to understand this according to this next statement I'm about to make, right? One time I was watching Dr. Phil, I don't advise this now, but it was many years back I was watching it. And Dr. Phil says, don't say but to me, because then what I feel like is, whatever you were just saying is invalid. But now what I'm about to say is the real story. So why don't you just say whatever you're going to say after but, so that we know what you really mean, right? But yeah, they're saying, oh yeah, we're reformers and all of this. The reality is that they are corruptors, right? And so the reality is that they don't realize it. Yash'urun means to feel, to take it in and really grasp it on a deep terms, right? They don't seem to get that point. And it's based on arrogance and ignorance. So arrogance and ignorance, when they come together, it's a very, very dangerous cocktail. Because arrogance and ignorance give somebody a false confidence that is ridiculous. And you'll be very annoyed by being around this person because they are so sure about something that they don't know what they're talking about. Right? You deal with this in the Muslim community. Someone's very forceful about something. How do you know that? Well, I've heard somebody say it. What the heck are you talking about? Oh, we know that this is what's going on, and that's what they're doing, and why? Well, how do you know it? Well, I know. Why are you being so forceful about it, right? So, these are two things that a believer would be very careful. We should always think to accuse ourselves when am I doing this right? Am I being fair about this? Or have I really studied it? Do I really know what I'm talking about? Am I really well thought out and well researched on the subject? So then the next one, and that's the point, is that they have contradictory behavior, right? So they're doing something, claiming that what they're doing, reforming, for example, here in this case. We're reforming, we're causing things to be better. So the hypocrites of Medina, did they fix things? Do they think that's what they were doing? Well, that's what they were claiming. You know, they thought, we're fixing it. What did they think? Here's what the bottom line was. Abdullah ibn Ubay as-Salul, who was the head of the hypocrite community, and those who followed him, they were wanting to have control over Medina. Actually, some of the historical reports show that he was about to be put in position of leadership, right? Of the whole of Medina, of Yathrib, before it was called Medina. So now, people out of nowhere start following some guy from Mecca, from Quraysh, which is against our tribal affiliation. And he's not from our affiliation, and we know our people here. And then here he comes trying to change things, right? So this is the root of the hypocrisy, is that we want control, we want to run this thing. And so this guy is coming in and encroaching upon what we want. So that they think is if we do these deals on the side with these Jews, they seem to have influential means economically, and they're pretty smooth in the way they do what they do. So maybe we can get everybody to turn against the Prophet. Maybe we can get them to leave here, right? That's what their goal was, right? And so now we'll see that, their goal went the opposite way. Like we talked about last week, when it says, زَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا, because they were wanting so badly that the Prophet would prove to be a false prophet, that Islam would be defeated, that people would stop believing, and people would go down in their belief, right? That's what they wanted. They were wanting this not to succeed, right? And so they were claiming that they're on the side of the Muslims, but working against it. So what kept happening is new ayahs, new believers, new victories, and it just was eating away at them, right? So the next ayah, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون. So, who can tell me what and mean? What is this and here? Does this mean anything right? What? In our context, it doesn't, because in English you do not begin a sentence with and, right? إذا, what does إذا mean? When it happens, right? قيل لهم, it is said to them, right? آمنوا, believe, right? You should believe. كما آمن الناس, look at all the people who've seen this truth. Look at it, it's growing, right? They will say, قالوا أنؤمن كما as have آمن السفهاء, the foolish people have believed. Just like today in the modern world. People say, why do you believe that stuff? Why do you follow on that guy and he said this and this said that? Why would you believe this stuff? Why would you even believe these things, right? This is how they talk nowadays. ألا إنهم هم السفهاء. In fact, the reality is that they are the fools and they don't know it, right? So the rough translation is, when they are asked to believe as the others have, they respond, shall we believe as the fools do? In fact, they are the fools and don't know it, right? Here, fool is talking about an ultimate reality of self. All of the evidence points to that this man is a prophet and that this religion is divinely supported. That's what the evidence is showing. And everybody's seeing that, embracing it. But their desire for power and control, okay, is blinding them, and they are the one that is the fools. Because at the end of the day, who proved to be the ones who made Arabia better? The hypocrite of Medina or Islam and the Muslims? That's the fact of history, right? And so, at the end of the day, the believers would see that these people are clearly not thinking right. So here when it says the fools, some of the scholars said they're referring to the poor and the slaves. But I don't think that's a very strong point, because this is in Medina. Common folk across the board had become Muslim. Back in Mecca, it would have been true that when they would call Muslims sufahat, pretty much the bulk, the 8/10 of the Muslims were poor enslaved people who had been freed. Whereas in Medina, average families, common folk are becoming Muslim in large numbers. So here sufaha is really termed because of the modern thing of, why are you believing these things from the unseen? That's basically nowadays, and even back then. You're saying that this angel is coming to him and that he's getting divine revelation. This is a holy word of God. This is ridiculous, right? This is the concept that they dealt with as we are dealing with. Is there any questions about this one? Okay, peer pressure. This is how many people get led to hypocrisy. Their friends are telling them. The people around them are telling them, right? So, as we said, أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Where did it go? I think this is supposed to be the next one, is it? Is this the same one? Yeah. Oh, yeah, here it is. I guess it's supposed to be peer pressure. We went a little bit extreme with the definition here. Shady, two-faced mockery. So, but it's the peer pressure that we're talking about. Their close allies are saying, you should be against this. These are people that they've known them forever. They're their close friends. They have, business dealings, family ties with them. And so, it says, وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئُونَ. So these hypocrites, when they would be around the believers, don't have the audacity, and they feel like it's wise. They feel like they're being wise and not saying directly, we're against the Muslims. They think, if we go, we can be spies, we can find stuff, and then we can go bring this material to so-and-so, and then turn them against the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, right? And so basically, when they meet the believers, they say, we believe like you, right? But when they are alone with their devils, they say, indeed, we are with you. We were only mocking them, right? So that's how they act when they come back to people who think like them. They have a very strong against the Prophet attitude. But when they're at the mosque and around the Muslims, right? So somebody might say, why was the last verse seemingly they were coming out with it? The last verse is when somebody from the family is coming to them at home in a closed setting. They're like, why don't you see this beauty of this message? Why don't you embrace it? They're like, this is ridiculous, you know. But they would not say that if they come to the mosque, right? Because now they're in front of all these, they're surrounded by this power structure of believers, right? They would not openly say that. They will go along like they're with them. So here in Arabic, when you say khala, you would say bi, and usually in Arabic. Say khala bi, he was alone with such and such, right? But it says khala ila, meaning they're going to seek refuge. That's the place they're going to be alone, to gain the benefit that they're looking for, and it's away from the believers, right? So they spend time with the believers, and then they start to be, and the final verses that we'll talk about, you'll see, the light is coming to them, like the lightning, they're starting to see the light. So then they go away, and then they get that peer pressure and that comfort zone that they've been used to before this message. Now, yeah, we're with you, those guys, and we're not with them. Because they'll think, it seemed like you were with them, you know? No, don't worry. Be assured, we're with you. We were just mocking them. We seem to act like we're believers with them, but we don't really believe. So that's the Prophet ﷺ. He said the worst people, أَشَرُّ النَّاسِ ذُو الْوَجْهَيْنِ يَأْتِ هَؤُلَاءِ بِوَجْهٍ وَهَؤُلَاءِ بِوَجْهٍ. The worst of the people are the two-faced. They come to one group of people with an agenda, with an attitude about some subject. Then they go to another people on the same subject with a very different, opposite agenda, right? And it's all about gaining political interest with that group versus that group, right? And so that's basically the worst thing. So this is not wisdom where you would address certain people in some way and take certain priorities as far as how you say what you say. It's the same thing with the same purpose, right? Same intention. But that's wisdom. But this is nifaq. This is the worst thing you can do. Come to one person and be like, oh yeah, I really like you, you're my buddy and everything. I see everything like you, mashallah. And then you go to somebody else like, that guy, I can't stand him, everything about him is wrong. So this is what happens when backbiting happens. Some people, when backbiting happens, cowardice overcomes them, right? So somebody starts talking bad about somebody, even though they really don't feel like that, they start to agree, yeah, you're right, I don't know that, that guy, why she's talking like that, and why, she shouldn't be that way, and so forth. And now they've formed that. So when they're around this person, oh, well, I'm on your side and everything's fine, and I'm with you. When they're with that person, they have a totally, completely different thing, because now I'm with you, and I'm on your side, and they're playing the sides game, right? In Islam, there's one side. Whose side is that? Allah. That's the side. And the real believer, the firm believer on the Sirat al-Mustaqim is the same no matter who they're dealing with. And they say the same story about the same thing, about the same people, with the same concerns. Now if it's bad, they wouldn't bring it to someone else, they would bring it directly to the person. I feel that, this thing about you and so forth and so on, you should work on that, you should, what you said, X, Y, and Z. That is Islah. But to go to Tom, Dick, and Harry over here about it, that's a phrase we use in English, which means so-and-so, anyone, right? And some say, well, who is Tom, Dick, and Harry? Who are those guys? Yeah. So, and this is not just in religion. It's hypocrisy wherever it goes. The believer is sadiq. The believer is a genuine, honest person that maintains their character, right? They have a strong character of truth and honesty, and they call it like it is, and they're not looking to please people, right? I was in an environment one time that I was very upset and bothered because this person should have represented the Muslims, right? And there was a delegation that came from Europe, and they've been victim to this Islamophobia. And this person that I'm with, that I could not have imagined that they would say this, starts to say, yeah, Bin Laden and 9/11, and all the stuff that, has come from our community is just a disaster. Now we have kids putting on vests, regularly willing to go blow themselves up. And I'm like, hold on, what are you talking about? This is not common behavior. I've yet to meet one person in my whole 17 years now as a Muslim who said, I want to go put on a vest and blow myself up. Have you guys met any of those? I've never met it. But this guy is talking like this is something that happens in every mosque, right? And so I'm like, so I had to call him on it. First thing I said is, because we're in a situation where, we should not feel any sort of need to tone down what we feel. So my first thing was, are you sure that we just believe that 9/11 happened exactly as they said it, right? Is that what we really believe as a people, most of us? And he's like, yeah, we know, it's all the evidence is there. I said, okay, that's what you're saying. Allah knows best, And then I said, and you think that you really can honestly say that people in mosques, kids in mosques, are ready and willing to go blow themselves up regularly? Like this is the common thing that happens, right? I mean, this kind of goes along the lines of, this is where I think they get their information from. When one of the presidential candidates that's supposedly the one on our side, right, says, yeah, we need to have good relations with the Muslim community because they're on the front line to show us all the terrorists in their community. If we don't have good relations, then they won't tell us where all the terrorists they know, right? This is the one on our side in the debate, right? This is where we're at, guys. Yeah, she got that. They got that from the hypocrites. Like that's the FBI. I've sat with them and I've been in seminars that I gave for them. They admit wholeheartedly all of the extremism we see in the West is done online. There is absolutely no evidence of any mosque teaching or cultivating some sort of... I mean, you have some mosques that are not... They're anti-American culture. You have that. And you have probably in every mosque you have some people who feel like that. That's fine, but none of those people are saying kill the people or attack them. They just want to stick very strongly to whichever culture they came from. And that's their right, But there's nobody saying kill or celebrating or supporting that. This is where you find the hypocrisy starts to become a big problem. And then the last one for today, free will is either going to be for us or against us. At the end of the day, we have free will. Everyone has free will. Allah has left everyone to make a decision about their faith and attempt and make their intentions about how they want to live. Right? So it says, Allahu yastahzi'u bihim wa yamudduhum fi tughyanihim ya'malun. What that means is, in Arabic, yastahzi means to make fun of, to mock, to make them look ridiculous. Right? That's literally what it means. Now, somebody might say, Allah yastahzi, people have said that in our history. They decided that yastahzi is not a good word that would refer to Allah. He mocks them, right? And so Allah does yastahzi. Why? Because He said so, right? Who are we with our mind to decide that Allah does not have a quality or characteristic? You see? Does it sound wrong? Well, when we study the tafsir, it will make perfect sense, right? What it means is, going back to the ayah from, we'll just read the translation here. God will mock them as He extends their life, wandering misguided in their transgressions, right? So in Surah Al-Hadid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about what this istihza will be. On the Day of Judgment, people who have rejected God and prophets, they will find themselves going to the hellfire. People who have embraced prophethood and are believers, they will be brought forth in front of a bridge. And so this bridge that they will see in front of them, they will have some light coming from them and they will go over it, right? So Allah will allow hypocrites, even hypocrites who have no belief in their heart, that He will allow them to go with them over the bridge. Well, they're thinking, wow, we're sliding through into heaven with our plot, right? That we said we were believers, right? As though Allah did not know what was in their heart, right? So now they're going to go try. And on the bridge, they're going to tell the believers, let us have some of your light. Let us catch up with you. The believers will say, come on, right? And then Allah, when they get up on the bridge, He will put a wall down. And on this wall, now the people will fall off into the hellfire. Right? So this is His way of yastahzi'u bihim. Now somebody might say, but that doesn't sound right. Why is he mocking them, right? No. In this life, they tried to fool Allah and the believers, as we said a couple weeks ago. That was what they did. They tried to fool Allah and the believers by acting like a believer and try to gain worldly benefit as a result. So when the hereafter comes, Allah will allow them to think that they're going to gain some hereafter benefit with their fake belief, and then He will prove them and the justice will come down. Whereas in this life, as you see the end of this verse, in this life they were given wealth, they were given opportunity, they were given whatever they wanted. You know, you can be a disbeliever, a hypocrite, and get whatever you want from this world. And He will let you have that. And you will have your freedom to get those things. But that's not how someone's value will be judged, right? Our value will be judged by our character and our deeds and all of that, not by how much wealth we gain or what status we gain in this life. So that's what the istihza is. So, as we see, the reality of a long life with worldly status and possession is in the eye of the beholder. For a believer, to live a life of gratitude, to pray regularly, extra prayers, to keep asking God's favor and His bounty, to seek guidance regularly, to account oneself. We don't ever assume because we have wealth that now we're comfortable and complacent about spirituality. People with diseases in their heart, you will find them with wealth, they're not practicing very strong because they'll say, oh, we're busy with worldly things, right? And that's people who have been fooled by the nature of this world, right? And that's where we have to rethink, okay, alhamdulillah, I have these things, right? Alhamdulillah, I've been blessed with such and such. But that means I should only increase in my worship for two reasons. Number one, in gratitude, and number two, to protect myself from becoming hypocritical in my claim to faith. That I say I'm a believer, right? And I'm devoted to God. So He's given me all this, so now I become complacent and I'm not practicing because of worldly interest. You know, that's where people fall the wrong way. Bottom line is that the believer is honest and genuine. Our interactions with others are not based on fitting in with people. Rather, we seek acceptance with Allah. That's our attitude. The take home from these verses is not, oh, those are bad hypocrites, they're all doomed, you know, too bad for them. The reality of these verses is guidance for us, that we protect our hearts, that we do not allow ourselves to be two-faced, that we look at what we're doing when we think we're doing good. As husbands, for example, we have authority in our household. We've been given the responsibility of leadership. Maybe sometimes we think, this is the way I want it, but we really haven't taken into account in shura how our wife and our children feel about things. And so we need to think and listen before we become arrogant or ignorant or corruptive, thinking we're doing the right thing just because it's our desire. You see? That would be an element of hypocrisy. The true believer is looking at, you know, as parents. Sometimes we just throw out a rule and we don't necessarily teach it or the why behind it, or we don't think about the long-term effects of this rule or this idea. Even the rule maybe look like in itself, it looks like a good thing, right? Like, you know, the concept of hitting a child because they didn't memorize the Quran or they didn't memorize it well. Somebody might think, well, there is a well-known psychological fact that when you bring some sort of, you know, reprimand, then the person, you know, it clicks in their mind, I've done something wrong, right? That does have evidence. But what many people that I know of who grew up, who were slapped and hit whenever they didn't memorize enough Quran, they resent the Quran and they become weak Muslims at the end of the day. So that system turned out, they won't say that to the people who enforced it, right? Because basically you're saying, you raised me in a messed up way. But when someone else builds a bridge with them and they feel comfortable to speak their mind, then they'll say, yeah, you know, I really didn't appreciate that growing up, right? So whatever it may be, we should think why we're doing this. Is this really in the best benefit? Is this really in the best interest of that person who is growing? And the same thing is true like as a mosque. You know, we make policies. We should think, we may think, you know, based upon some, you know, comfort zone or way it's been done, we've started before, that we're doing the right thing and that's the best policy. But when we think about it and we look in the actual results, we might see that that has not been proving to be a good policy. And thus we should review it and rethink it, right? And when somebody comes to us suggesting that we should review that, we should not immediately stand our ground because we know what we're doing and we're right from the get-go. We should rethink it and look into the results, the statistics, you know. MashaAllah, that's one of the things that has helped our school, Peace Academy, grow, particularly in the intellectual field and the organization administrative, because they're doing data-driven growth. They look at what are the proven methods and the means and what is not. And everybody's bought into that, right? So they're saying, yes, we all agree we should do that. If half the people said, we're not going to follow this data-driven, then no matter what they try to do, it's never going to work because they're not on board with the systemic approach to looking at cause and effect and the why. The reformers are the ones who truly are self-accounting. The reformers are the ones that truly look at the evidence. The hypocrites are the ones who are following desire for their own interests, right? And they just want to be right for the sake of being right, which is arrogance. And they're ignorant of the truth that will lead them to make a better decision. So this is where, you know, and a lot of people, they make decisions just because that's what people expect me to do, right? Some people want me to do this, some people want me to do that, so then I do it simply because of that. Now, if you look into what these people want you to do and you see the evidence and you see that that is in the best interest, you should change and follow whatever they said because that's pleasing to whom? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Not because it's pleasing to them and because they have the power or whatever, right? So this is basically, you know, some things we take home from these verses. And then actually the last thing, don't become complacent. We're all blessed here in Oklahoma. We all, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed us in many ways. We should not be weak in our spirituality because we have wealth or because we have certain worldly interests that we're following. We should be increased in our spirituality as a result of having these blessings because we know where those blessings came from and the right that He has upon us. Wallahu a'lam. Is there any questions about this one?
Could people like swirl between nifaq and being Muslim? Mu'min?
Yes, it happens. You know, the Quran, the ayat and the Quran and the hadith, it's the faith goes up and down. And that's why we keep saying, Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim, right? We keep asking Him to guide us to the straight path because our faith will go up and down. Diseases will get around us and seep into us. The believer, as Hassan al-Basri said, al-mu'min tarahu yalumu nafsahu da'iman. Always thinking, am I doing that? Why did I say that? Why did I do that? Somebody says, you know, why did you say that? They start thinking, okay, why did I say that? So they ask somebody else, you know, I said that. Did you feel that way? And then they say yes. Then they start thinking, oh, astaghfirullah, I didn't know that, right? I need to be accounting for that. I need to fix that, right? That's the spirituality of the believer. And that's the one that will grow. That's the one that will develop. When people say everything we're doing is right and it should be that way and it should never change and we should not listen to anybody who wants to change it, then we're not looking at things. I mean, as long as our gauge is the Quran and Sunnah, there's an open playing field on change. Change is a constant concept. There's a Sheikh Salman al-Auda in Saudi Arabia, Allah yahfadhu. He made this 6-minute clip called Ana Ataghayyir, right? Emphasizing that he changes, right? And it's interesting because he's talking about spirituality in this deep way. He's not quoting ayat and hadith. He's just talking about his own experience. He's almost 60 years old, okay? And he talks about how he changes. And he does it without wearing a ghutr and iqab, which Saudi culture would say, what? You know? And many people might have thought, he's one of the great scholars of Saudi Arabia. You know, many people thought it's like, now he's doing something wrong. But he's just making the point, fluctuating in a culture or something does not make me a sinful person, right? Choosing to follow that culture or this culture is not going to make me sinful, right? That the main thing is I need to look at my heart and my deeds. Is that pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if I'm not growing and developing, have I reached perfection? Right? If I'm not always in a see, some people, this is the conundrum of the idea of conservatism. The conundrum of what does conservative mean? Many people think it means to stick to religion or to stick to identity, when in fact, in many cases, it represents complacence and arrogance and ignorance because you don't grow. the concept of growth and development means that you will change, you will grow, you will develop, you will come to new conclusions, you will come to new attitudes and lifestyles. That is the nature of a humble, growing person. The one who thought, I own the truth and the way things are is right, we've been told from political discourse that that's the way it should be, right? The only thing that would make us not want to change is because Allah said that's not good change. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that's against this model of the guidance that I was sent with, right? But the door is open. MashaAllah, the Sahaba kept growing and growing. If you look at Umar radiallahu anhu, he changed many things about the leadership management style of who? Of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Who's better, Abu Bakr or Umar? Abu Bakr. It's some issue of belief. We have it in authentic hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said so, the Ummah agreed upon it, right? But Umar took position saying, look, as a person spiritually, of course, Abu Bakr is a moon in the sky of stars. But as a policy, as of growth and development of understanding this religion, there's no end to it. There's no end to human experience and trying to understand how we most best apply this religious concept. Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala did the same thing. He changed opinions as he went from here to there. And they said, why? He said, I'm seeing that these people require a different attitude. Now he could have said, I'm conservative. My fatwa that I made, I'm a sheikh, I'm a scholar, I know, that's it. Case closed. He could have said that. But one brother asked me whenever I was in Kuwait and I was studying Hanbali fiqh. And the brother asked me, he said, I'm reading a book on Hanbali fiqh. And it says, Imam Ahmad has an opinion, and then lahu riwaya ukhra. Imam Ahmad has another opinion on the same subject, and they're different. The same ruling, right? So at that point I said, you know what? I don't know why it's like that, right? Going back to the sheikh. I said, sheikh, why does it say Imam Ahmad has a riwayah and another riwayah? He said, here's what happened. Imam Ahmad would change his opinions after certain times. Now, was he a new student and he didn't know very much and then now he became a sheikh and he knew? No. The whole time he's a great scholar called Imam Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, right? The whole time he's muhaddith, memorizing tens of thousands of hadith. The whole time he has been the student of Imam Shafi'i. He's been the student of Abu Yusuf al-Qadi, the student of Abu Hanifa for 7 years, right? He is this great scholar, and then over time he changes opinion. So they're saying the reason why is we didn't have the means to decide which was the original opinion and which was the opinion that he changed later, because one scholar went that way and learned this one, and another one went that way, and they have a similar life, time that they had, and so we weren't able to decide which one. But the reason why he has this opinion and that opinion, is because he grew, he learned, he opened his mind. He didn't think everything we've learned is correct, it's set, that's it, it's the way it's going to be until Yawm al-Qiyamah, and anybody suggests otherwise, then there's some sort of heretical thing. So this is, I think, the idea that we should have about everything, and we always look to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khairan, subhanakallah bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.